Welcome back, guys. Here's the parts from the upper steering shaft that we pulled out. We're going to work on a lower steering shaft later today. What we have here is, here's the upper steering shaft, which was easily removed with 4 bolts. And here's the bottom of it, in which the upper seat for the upper bearing sat in. Now, I don't have a seat puller or a puller, whatever you want to call it, to get this out. So what I found was that I could use my breaker bar and get it down through the shaft, and since this is able to move back and forth, I could wedge it up against the little ridge on the seat and alternate and just pound that seat out gently, and it finally came out. And that's the way I did it. I don't know if that's the way you'll do it, but it's the method that worked for me. At the top, I just used the breaker bar again, but with a socket to drive out this upper bearing. Okay, it's kind of a funky looking thing, and I've got a replacement for that. Okay. Now, this seat has this bearing riding in it, and as you can see, it's pretty much disintegrated. And the reason behind that is it probably hadn't had any lubrication since 1952. There is still gear oil in the bottom of the steering box, but there's no way that that gear oil is going to reach where this bearing sits, and correspondingly these little tabs that hold these little rollers in have worn out, and all these guys fell out. So definitely needs to be replaced. Now, the only other things at the top besides the steering nut and washer that's underneath it is you have your spring, okay, and then you have your spring seat, and then there's a felt washer, and that's it. That's all the parts that were to this upper shaft assembly. So we've got some cleanup to do on it. Make sure this is all nice and clean, so when I drive the new race in, that it goes in nice and smooth. And also same for the top bushing. Now, I always wondered what this little guy was for, this little screw. And what this is for is, if you undo it, you then have a hole into the shaft, and that's where you can put your lubrication oil, and as it goes down, it will then lubricate your upper bearing, and also add more lubrication fluid into the box of the steering sector, or the steering box. So that's what we got so far. We're going to start working on the ball nut today and disassemble the ball nut. That's an interesting little thing, and we'll get back to that in a minute. Next up is this ball nut. Now, the ball nut consists of this block and this retainer, which is held on by this flathead screw and this flathead screw, and these top pieces, which means I've got 2. So what I have here, I've got 2 ball circuits, and that goes on to this worm gear. Okay, so if this was in the shaft and I turned this shaft, instead of the shaft moving back and forth, what you would see, since the shaft is held in place, this block would go up and down. These teeth then mesh into the steering sector gears, bringing those so they go back and forth, and then that's how it steers. Now, the interesting thing here is there is like really no play on these guys. Now, I don't think I'd normally try to take these off. Matter of fact, it's the first time I've ever tried this. I've done some search on YouTube. There's a lot of good videos on here on how to repack these, and they don't seem as bad as they look. So we'll see what happens, because I really need to clean this whole shaft up, get all this old oil off. Now, here's the bottom bearing. That looks to be in really good shape, and it is retained on here by this little guy, this little cap, which has this little pressed in piece. Now we're going to remove that, and we do not want to lose these pieces, and I should just be able to lightly pry this off. I don't want to damage it. There we go. When it's normally in there, it'll be pressed in fully, and it will retain this bearing in there. That looks pretty good. We're going to replace it anyway while we're in here. No reason not to. So we'll just put this all to the side. Don't want to lose anything. And what I'm going to do, actually we'll get a bigger screwdriver maybe. This one's too tight. No, that's not bad. I'm going to unscrew this top retainer. And we've just got a kind of a lock washer on there. Here's the other one. Sorry if you can't see this too well. Alright. Got a retainer removed. Here's the top part of our return. Looks like these guys just split apart. There's some of our ball bearings. We do not want to lose any of these. Now, I do hear, or I have read that these things can work with only 90% of their ball bearings. So, see, as I move these, kind of moves them in and out. So, here's some more. Here we get them all out of here. And then, there we go. All ready for the parts washer. And we've got all the bearings removed from the block. So, now I've got my screw gear. And then I got a bunch of bearings, so I'm going to count them all and we'll divide them up. And so I assume that we would have equal portions, so we hopefully will have an even number of ball bearings. And of course I got my gloves on because this 90-weight gear oil is pretty nasty, and I don't like it to get it on my hands while I got to turn the camera on and off. So I hope you enjoyed. We'll be back later.